You had someone at work you trusted. Not a best friend, just a decent person who helped you navigate your first few weeks. Told you who was approachable, remembered your dog's name. So, when they asked how you were handling the new project load, you were honest. You said you were stretched thin. You vented because that's what you do with someone safe. 3 weeks later, in a meeting you weren't invited to, your manager referenced your struggles with workload management. The phrasing was clinical, and the person who'd surfaced it was the same one who'd asked a question over coffee with a sympathetic nod. No confrontation, no dramatic betrayal, just your own honesty quietly repurposed into someone else's career advantage. It was an extraction. And here's the thing no onboarding deck will ever say plainly. Office politics doesn't reward good people and punish bad ones. It rewards people who can reshape a room without anyone noticing, and it punishes people who never learn to tell the difference between a colleague and an operation. So what is a workplace operator actually? Forget the image in your head. It's not the screamer in the conference room. Loud people are manageable because they create witnesses and paper trails. The person who will actually reroute your career is pleasant, helpful in small visible ways, and never creates a scene because scenes are evidence. What makes them effective isn't some cinematic psychopathy. It's a mundane, learnable skill set. Impulse control, social pattern recognition, and the ability to treat relationships as instruments while appearing warm. Babiak and Hare's research on corporate psychopathy gets cited constantly in this space, and parts of it hold up, but you don't need a clinical framework to explain most of what you'll actually encounter. You just need a workplace that rewards managing perception over managing outcomes. Most workplaces are exactly that, not because they're malicious, but because measuring real contribution is hard and measuring likability is easy. That gap is where operators set up shop, and they don't need a personality disorder to exploit it. They just need to notice it exists. They show up in 3 recognizable patterns, and each one looks completely different in daily behavior. The first is the collector. You'll know them by their generosity. They share credit publicly, offer help before you ask, bring you into conversations you didn't expect to be part of. It feels like kindness. What's actually happening is deposit making. Every favor gets logged, and debts get called in at moments that matter. A vote of support in a reorg discussion, silence when someone questions their work, your name backing their proposal. You'll comply without fully understanding why, because the reciprocity norm, one of the deepest grooves in human social wiring, makes refusing a generous person feel like a moral failing, even when the generosity was strategic. You won't see the ledger. You'll just feel vaguely obligated and never quite know why. The second is the narrator. This one doesn't operate through relationships at all. They operate through story. You will rarely see them in the middle of a crisis. They don't lead projects, don't volunteer for the ugly tasks, and don't put themselves in positions where failure could stick. What they do is show up after things happen and frame what happened. They write the recap email. They give the hallway summary to leadership. They are the voice in the skip level that says, here's what actually went on. The person who controls the post-event narrative has more organizational power than the person who actually solved the problem. And the narrator has figured this out so thoroughly that they've made it their entire career strategy. You do the work, they describe the work. Leadership remembers their description, not your labor. The third is the chameleon. This person behaves differently depending on who's watching, and the shift is so smooth you'll only catch it if you're specifically looking. In front of leadership, they're engaged, articulate, and solutions-oriented. In peer settings with no authority present, they're passive, dismissive, or subtly territorial. The tell is the inconsistency itself. If someone is warm and proactive in every meeting with your VP, but flat and disinterested in every working session without them, you're not looking at an introvert having a bad week. You're looking at someone who allocates effort based on who can advance them and who can't, and you just learned which category you're in. Here are the concrete, observable signals that most people rationalize away until it's too late. They ask personal questions early and often. Not about your hobbies, but about your stress, your frustrations, your doubts about the team. That's not rapport, that's mapping your pressure points. They kick people on emails selectively. Not every thread, but the ones where the optics frame you a certain way. They express concern about you to others in language that sounds caring but functions as reputation placement. I'm a little worried about how Jamie's handling the Peterson account, is a sentence that looks like empathy and operates like a demotion. They vanish during emergencies, then reappear with a composed summary that positions your scramble as chaos and their absence as calm. They take credit through proximity, standing next to the work, being present in the room, adding one small comment to the thread, so that when leadership recalls the outcome, their face is somehow attached to it, even though they built nothing. And the most specific tell of all, they give you subtly wrong information. Not lies, just slightly off details. A deadline that's a day short. A meeting room that's been changed. Small enough to be written off as honest mistakes, consistent enough to make you look slightly less prepared than you actually are, in front of exactly the people who decide your trajectory. None of these signals are dramatic. That's precisely what makes them effective. Drama gets investigated. Patterns this quiet just get rationalized. The reason you don't catch these patterns while they're happening isn't a failure of intelligence. It's that your own perception is doing their work for them. The halo effect, one of the most consistently replicated findings in psychology, means that once you've categorized someone as likable, your brain filters out contradictory evidence before you consciously process it. You'll watch them do something off, and your mind will generate an excuse faster than your attention can flag it. Pluralistic ignorance means that even when multiple people sense something is wrong, everyone looks around, sees no one else reacting, and concludes they must be imagining it. The silence becomes self-reinforcing. Everyone's doubt is invisible to everyone else. And if you finally do speak up, you'll often hit what clinicians call DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about what they did. It's about why you're creating conflict or struggling with collaboration. You're now defending your own perception instead of examining theirs, and the cognitive drain of that reversal is the point. They don't need to win the argument. They just need to exhaust you out of having it. None of this would work if organizations were neutral referees. They're not, but it's more specific than the system is rigged. Companies rely on feedback mechanisms, peer reviews, 360s, manager impressions that a skilled operator can gain with minimal effort. HR is structurally incentivized to resolve complaints quietly, which in practice means managing the person who raised the issue rather than investigating the person it's about. Leadership often genuinely likes the operator because the operator never surfaces problems, only curated solutions and clean summaries. The result isn't a conspiracy. It's a system that consistently fails to notice what's happening to honest people until they burn out, get reassigned, or leave, at which point the operator expresses polite concern about their departure, inherits half their responsibilities, and gets praised for stepping up during a difficult transition. And here's the end game nobody tells you. The operator doesn't want you fired. Fired is a clean break, a severance package, a fresh start. They want you diminished, quieter, not destroyed, just gray. And the hardest truth in all of this is that most people only recognize the pattern clearly after it's already done its work.